Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to finally be filming another video for you guys. I feel like I keep promising y'all videos and then life happens, so I'm really sorry about that, but I am finally filming one for you and getting it out there, so here it is. If you're new here, my name is Autumn Renee, and I am currently a foster parent. If you've watched my earlier videos, you know that I started out this journey as a single foster parent, so if you're interested in learning more about that and my journey as a single foster parent, I'll definitely link some videos down below. Today we're going to be talking about adopting from foster care. So whether you are single or a couple or in any stage of life, if you're interested in adopting for foster care, or maybe you're about to go through the process and you're interested in how other people's experiences have gone, this is for you. So a little bit of background for those of you who maybe don't know where we are right now. I got my current son a little over a year ago at the end of February last year. And so he was about 5 months old, almost 6 months. And I got him as an emergency placement, middle of the night. Didn't think he was going to be with me that long, and then turned out he was going to be a very long-term placement. It's not very common, I would say, in foster care, especially for young ones, to end up being adoptable and stay in your care for so long. Usually they end up going back to a relative or back to their parents or some other place, but I am very lucky and he's going to get to be mine. So they let me know probably last fall in November that most likely his case was going to go to adoption. At that point in time, his bio parents had not done their service plan. I'm not going to get into details in this video about his situation with his bio parents or anything like that, just because that's private information that they may choose to share if they want to. I'm not going to break their privacy by telling you guys their story or my son's story without his consent. So I'm going to leave that part of that out of this video, but I will just let you know that they did not do what the judges had asked them to do in this situation. And it just was determined that the best thing for the child was to not be in their care. So at that point in time, they started kind of getting the ball rolling for the termination of parental rights. So that's usually how the process starts. You know, you'll be fostering the child. Most of the time you do not get a child in your home, it's automatically adoptable. If you are interested in only adopting, you're not really interested in fostering at all, you can get an adopt-only license, which is where you'll only take adoptable placements. I don't have any experience with that because I didn't go in here getting adopt-only license. I actually have a video about the different kinds of foster care licenses and what they mean that I'll link down below if you're kind of more interested in that. But what I got was a foster to adopt license, which means I can both foster and adopt from foster care. So I definitely began this journey thinking I was going to foster for several years and then adopt, but it just turned out that my first placement ended up being adoptable, and of course I wanted to adopt him because he's my son. You know, it was meant to be. So that's kind of where we ended up. So in his case, started out not thinking it was going to be adoptable, but as time went on, you know, parents didn't show up for visits, they didn't do what they were supposed to be doing, didn't have a stable home and all those kinds of things, which eventually ended up being in the case that he was going to need a more permanent place somewhere else. At that point they did, or really throughout the entire case, they've been looking for kinship placements. If you don't know, a kinship placement is a family member or relative or close family friend that maybe could take the child in either temporarily or permanently while the parents try to get back on their feet. In his case, unfortunately, there was just no one. There was no extended family, no close family friends, anybody who was eligible or able to take him. And if you're wondering like what would make someone ineligible, it could be a couple different things, you know, drug use, or being in prison, having a record against kids, already having an open case with CPS, those kinds of things. So it was really sad, but just everyone in his life was just unable or not willing to take him or want him. So I got him. So they told me that most likely the case was going to be going for adoption. And at that point, I did not have to adopt. It was not a, you have to do this. It was completely a, do you want to do this, for sure. In fact, his social worker actually thought that I wasn't even interested in adoption when she first brought it up to me. So that was kind of a surprise for both of us when she brought it up. Anyway, so that kind of led to us starting the adoption process. She told me in fall, like, hey, this is where the case is going. You know, are you interested in adopting? And I was like, yeah, I am. And she was like, oh, really? And then we kind of started the path from there. From there, they tried to start, they basically told the parents, like, hey, by this date, you know, things need to happen, or, you know, you're going to lose your rights. And so that date was set. I actually got pushed back a couple times just because the attorney for the parents was fighting for their rights, as they should. And so that date ended up being moved to February of this year. So the termination of parental rights hearing happened in February this year. Their rights were terminated. The judges decided that was what was best for the child. And he is now going to be up for adoption. So now that's kind of where we are. Unfortunately, the situation of the world, the worldwide pandemic, has closed the courts in my area, and his adoption has been on hold until further notice. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle of the adoption process right now. You know, we've got parental rights terminated. They're looking to start the adoption process for me. And where I am in Texas, there's a 90-day waiting period. So after rights are terminated for the parents, there's 90 days for any like family members to step forward and be like, hey, like I'm interested in this child. So once that 90-day waiting period passes, then that's when the adoption process can officially start. Unfortunately for me, all the courts are on hold and they're not doing anything. So I'm kind of just in a holding pattern right now. I know some areas are doing like court online and stuff. At the moment in my area, they're not doing that, but I hope that eventually they will. So I don't know how long this will last. But I am thankful to know that, you know, my social worker knows he's going to be with me. There's no family members fighting for him. You know, there's not any real feasible thing that could happen that would jeopardize his adoption at this point. So it's not as nerve-wracking as it could be. I definitely know people who've been in much worse situations, but do know that that is something that you could encounter if you're trying to adopt from foster care, is family members or other family close friends, you know, trying to fight for the kids. And at that point, you really do have to kind of, well, one, you have to follow what the state goes with, because at the end of the day, you know, that child is not yours yet. So you kind of have to go with what they say. And whether or not you choose to try to fight them on that really just depends on the situation. You know, I've known situations that ended up great both ways. You know, they ended up with a kinship placement and a relative that ended up being great. And I've also known situations where it didn't end up being so great. So that's really a case-by-case basis. I've mentioned this in other videos, but definitely do not assume that relatives or bio parents are horrible people, because every case in foster care, in fact, the majority of cases in foster care, are not these horrible abusive cases you hear about. You know, well, I'm not going to get into their situation, but just know that, like, you know, there's not always this horrible ill intent and terrible things that happen as far as bio parents are considered. You know, a lot of times they're really wonderful, great people, and there's just, you know, they've had things out of their control in their life. So just keep that in mind when you're getting into foster care, not to be quick to judge others on that matter. People have not walked the same road as you have. So just keep that in mind, that is something you may encounter if you are interested in adopting from foster care. So just to kind of recap, once you start fostering and if the parents are not working their service plan and they decide that this child is going to need a permanent home somewhere else, they will look into other placements, kinship placements. If none of those pan out, they will eventually set a date for the parents to have to meet their case by. Usually it's a year. I'm sure it can vary a little bit. And I know there's up to a 6-month extension where I am, but usually it's a year. The parents get to kind of get their life back in order or fix whatever they needed to fix in order to properly care for their child. But if none of the family members and or bio parents work out and the rights are terminated, then generally you have that waiting period for anyone to come forward. If you pass that, then they're basically yours and you can adopt from there. Now, as far as the actual adopting goes, obviously I have not gotten there yet. I will definitely make a future video when I've gone through all of this, but from what I have been told, basically, you will need to get an attorney. Certain children qualify to get like a free attorney. So, well, it's actually your attorney, but you can qualify if your kids qualify. Basically, that's in my area, that's any minority kids who are over the age of 2 or any kids of any ethnicity who are over 6. So they're they're considered special needs. In that case, which I know that sounds like that term is usually used for like learning disabilities or mental or physical disabilities. But in this case, special needs just means children who are harder to be adopted. So any kid who is a minority over 2 or any kid of any ethnicity who's over the age of 6. And those may vary by state. That's just how it is in Texas. Anyway, so if they meet those special needs criteria, which at this point, since my son's adoption has been delayed, he will actually meet that criteria, then they will actually reimburse you for your attorney fees. If they are not, if you're adopting a really young infant, at the time of adoption, they're still an infant, or they're, you know, a white child who's maybe under the age of 6, or other certain circumstances, then you may have have to pay the attorney fees. Obviously, I mean, it's completely worth it for, you know, adopting your child at this point. If you're at this point in the process, I mean, I'm sure you will do anything and everything for that child. But just so you know, that is a thing that you will encounter, is you will have to get an attorney to kind of handle all the adoption stuff and the fees. And they also, I was just told this a couple weeks ago when they told me that the adoptions were going to be on hold. My social worker did go ahead and let me know that since the adoption is getting pushed, he will be eligible for adoption subsidies and adoption benefits. And same thing, if the child falls into the special needs category, then you were eligible for those things. And this stuff probably ranges also by state, but I know for here it's he'll get free college tuition at any state school, he'll have free health insurance, and then you'll also get an adoption subsidy. I don't know how much the adoption subsidy is, but I do know that that's something that your attorney will negotiate, and I'm sure it's dependent on the needs of the child. So just know that that's something you may encounter if you are adopting an older child or a child of a minority, or also a sibling group can also be a special needs kind of case. So just know that if you are adopting in any of those kind of categories, that you may have to have an attorney to help kind of negotiate some of those benefits and things for you. A lot of it's set by the state, but some of it is negotiable. So just know that that's kind of the next step in the process, is getting that attorney and getting all that stuff set up, and then you will get your adoption date. I'm sure there will be a lot of paperwork to fill out. Like I said, I haven't actually gotten to this point in the process yet, but when I get there, I will definitely let you guys know what it all entails and how it works. And so at this point, that's kind of where we are in the adoption process. If you guys have any questions about the adoption, or you're more curious about my journey up to this point, how I became a foster parent, what it was like being a single foster parent when I was younger, definitely check out the videos below. I'll link them below so you guys can go and revisit my story. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.